It's the 7th of July, and this morning I have woken up to disturbances of the peace and repeat offenders since 2006 still in my proximity and still offending the Declaration of Human Rights and the Constitution of the country, as well as the church of my matrimony. I'll be very forthright with regard to the party politics at play that has organised offences against the state while benefiting from legislation that came into fruition as a consequence of my humanitarian work. The page that I have distributed highlights the legislation that has been brought into play in this country since 2018. There is also the issue of the documentation that I received in the past 5 days. There has been no offence present, and there hasn't been practice in accordance with legislation enacted or in play in this matter. The information is dubious, to say the least. So there's a very serious matter with regard to the medical negligence that I'm experiencing as well, since I became a married mother, that I'm treating on my own. And there's the issue then of the preoccupation of those that are very bad party politics and damages to the legislation that arose from my work being disrespected as well. And as I've mentioned, there has been damages to bodily integrity that culminate as very dangerous spiritual violence. So there, as I have said, repeat offenders still causing offence, and they have harmed my boy and treated my child highly disrespectfully, and these people are hoping to prosper from my property. Now, there's a very serious issue with regard to the extent of damages that these individuals are responsible for, and it's affected not just faith and family, as I keep reiterating, but also the environment. Now, as I've mentioned, there have been a few professionals that have participated in very unprofessional practices, and they have caused offence. And unfortunately, they have violated privacy, proximity, protection, and protocol. And they haven't worked in accordance with good practice. So the legislation that has been arising from my work that is being disrespected is in jeopardy, and my properties are in jeopardy, and the environment is in jeopardy, and children's lives are in jeopardy. And there are still people in this community that think they're prospering from my wealth and my purpose. I'm a private pacifist, and I'm a recovery advocate that have helped people in their journey of recovery. And there are people that, as I've mentioned, are preoccupied with property that they're not safe trespassing on, and they're breaking the law. And it's not very safe at this stage of the game for people's lives to be jeopardized as a consequence of bad practice of professionals that haven't been looking after or prioritizing people's health and wealth. So there are, unfortunately, liabilities that have arrived in my hometown, my community, and they have disrespected the foundations of my forefathers, and they have disrespected ancestry, heritage, and culture. And there is an issue with the obstruction and the miscarriage of justice and the perversion of justice that's occurring. So it's really serious now at this stage of the day that there are individuals that can't do their duties. And there are individuals that have been of bad practice, damaging what they don't own, disrespecting what they have no right to access, and that have been monetizing and not paying their dues, still causing problems and risking lives. There have been casualties already, and there have been breaking and entering incidents in my abode, and there have been PTRB and impact statements and ombudsman procedures, and not one of those formalities has been cordially treated in a democracy due to bad party politics. It's just as forthright as that. And in the meantime, property theft and repeat fraud that I addressed, fraud that was occurring prior to 2018, is still a cycle that's being perpetuated in this country, community and democracy. So the legalities of it are quite straightforward. I have documented my life thoroughly due to nuisances, to say the least, that can't mind their own homes and that have loose tongues. They have been a very dangerous defamation of my good character, my good name and my good reputation, and that they're after causing harm to innocent life. And the legalities within this jurisdiction are a little bit complicated, to say the least. The issue of breaking and entering and continued efforts of spiritual violence in this community by individuals that haven't addressed their shortcomings, failings or defects of character with the party politics in the mix, disrespecting the legislation that came around and about as a consequence of my work. All of that are all very serious issues that unfortunately the relevant individuals, professionals haven't had the courage or bravery to address properly. So courage and bravery is absent, and the Hippocratic Oath is a bit damaged in this community, so it doesn't put much faith in the practitioners that have been manipulating, utilizing, exploiting, monetizing, etc. from my purpose. So unfortunately, as a married mother and property owner, there's an issue with me being offended and living in conditions to satisfy unqualified, uneducated people that haven't respected any framework or any paradigm that upholds the pillars of the legislation that came from my work and purpose. So I'm concerned about their mental health. I'm concerned about any institute that would facilitate any vain-worthy cause for a land grab. It's not safe when an innocent child of mine or any child has been disrespected and walking into other people's homes and, not paying your dues since 2006. They're all crimes against the democracy that haven't been duly addressed. So I'm really concerned about people's lives being jeopardized to accommodate offenders against my good name. As a law-abiding citizen, as a private royal, as a recovery advocate, as a humanitarian, etc., I'm very tired of having to repeat myself, but there are people that are having difficulty understanding or comprehending the reality. I've had objectives for nearly 20 years and I've achieved my objectives, and I haven't given anyone any permission to benefit or disrespect from my purpose or my bloodline or my property. And the practitioners that are damaging women's anatomy, I'm concerned for your ethics and behaviors, and your mentality. It's not really safe to exploit or monetize from a spiritual being. So the United Nations is getting an update. It seems the government has refused to do what it's supposed to do, and it seems as hate crime in a democracy is present. Those individuals that have been disrespecting living conditions and the hierarchy of needs and stuff and not paying their dues in many respects, I'm concerned for you this morning and for the children.